You talked about Priesta. I think we should just lump in a lot of these players together because we're about to talk about Carolina and their team is kind of filled with the same type of players. So Priesta, a world champion in his own right, definitely, he's been on some of the top teams in the CDL. He was on that inaugural Atlanta FaZe roster. He was on the 100 Thieves roster before they went to the CDL that got to the Champs Grand Finals. So he's been a great player for a long time. But he, along with guys like Slasher, TJ, and Vivid, and then there are a few others across the CDL. I think of them as kind of like the last chance you of the CDL, and that they are on teams now where it might be their last chance to prove that they are CDL caliber players still. And that's not necessarily fair to all of those players, I'm sure, because if you're on a bad team or if you have bad teammates like Slasher was alleging of Snoopy last season, like you're kind of being set up for failure in a way. But there are only so many CDL teams. If we don't have expansion, we only have 12 teams. And there aren't many teams that are willing to bring back players that they already dropped or already got rid of because they didn't think that they could, to harp back on the ceiling comment, but to kind of raise their ceiling. And if they don't believe that guys like Slasher or Priesta or TJ or Vivid or a guy like Paul X, who is now back in the CDL, if they don't believe that they can raise their ceiling, then there might not be another team for them to go to next season. So, what do you think of those players? What do you think of this potentially being the last chance? Something that we had talked about with a player like Clayster last season. Granted, different situation as he was the oldest player in the CDL, but it did feel like you're kind of running out of teams at a certain point, and there might not be the next team to get you.
Yeah, I don't know age-wise if Slasher is the oldest
He's
player now, but
close, if not.
I just remember I mentioned it on one of the episodes. It probably would have been the one where we were talking about Clay and actually retire. I believe it was Brian Stats on Twitter who like tweeted like the only three players returning uh this year who competed in Ghosts, which is 2014, are Attach, Slasher, and TJ. And I remember that because I was arguing like, yeah, TJ in my head really came on and like that stunner team with Hook at the start of AW, so I didn't really even classify him with like Slasher and Attach there. And obviously even Slasher to an extent, he wins that first event where Aches is playing with the stitches in his hand or whatever in AW, and Attach has his moment where he's trying to wall bang the fence on Warhawk, S&D, and Ghosts. But even that, I mean, so you're just thinking like those three guys were towards the start of their careers
Mm-hmm.
back in Ghosts, and now they're at the point 10 years later where they're the last three players who were competing a decade ago still. So that's it kind of puts it in perspective that yeah, I mean it's coming to that point where if guys like Slasher don't see success this year, there will be questions around how much longer he's going to be competing. And obviously, I think very highly of Slasher. I think he's a really smart player and really talented leader. So I expect him to be able to bring out the most in somebody like Gwen, which I think on a more positive note, that's got to be the main storyline for Carolina this year is like, you got the rookie of the year, you were able to keep him. There were those rumors around Carolina potentially moving on from the CDL or entertaining offers from other organizations that were interested. And I brought up the point like Gwen is obviously if an organization is looking to come in, having the reigning rookie of the year has got to be an interesting or an attractive selling point for Carolina. But they're able to keep their spot and they're able to hold on to the rookie of the year. He wasn't like poached by another team. So like, what is he going to be capable of in year two? A lot of pressure is going to be on him. I feel like to continue to develop and only improve as a player and show, especially towards the end of last year, there was the stuff with Abuza and like Abuza saying he deserved rookie of the year and all that. I think in year two, Gwen's got to come out and just come out firing and prove, like, yeah, I deserved Rookie of the Year if that's the case. And if not, like, if he struggles out the gate and Abuza becomes the star for Vancouver, it's going to be, we might have to have a debate about, yeah, well, let's Rookie of the Year, did it go to the wrong person in 2024? But that's obviously for a later time. I think, yeah, you mentioned Slasher, potential last chance here. I think someone like Vivid, especially um, with at least like the rumors of him being on an AR now, like I don't know if it's necessarily his last chance, but he's had a lot of chances, it feels like, too. And even a guy like TJ, you know what he's capable of. You know he's going to be a solid SMG player who's really good at search. So, um, outside of like the potential role swap for Vivid there, like you know what Vivid, Slasher, and TJ bring to the table. And if this team struggles, like it's very realistic that this could be their last chance in the CDL. Obviously, I think highly of all those players, and I hope it's not the case. And I hope this team sees some success and doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's got to be at least mentioned, and it's going to be what people have their eyes on, I think, going into this year.
I hadn't thought about it until you said something, but then I looked it up, and according to COD Gamepedia, so if they're wrong, then don't blame me. The oldest active CDL player is not Slasher, it is Classic, who is a substitute for Atlanta FaZe as far as I know, but Slasher is the oldest starter in competitive COD, really. Um, Slasher is 30 years old, if you can believe that, which makes me feel incredibly old myself. So he's the oldest player, starting in the CDL, and the next oldest player would be Attach
So
at
I was going to say.
27. He would turn 28 during this season. Um, yeah, so I'm feeling 103 right now because I'm only a year younger than Attach. Granted, Gunny is still 18, but it is, I'm not feeling great right now. But I just found that pretty interesting that, just from an age perspective, and you have to think about it in terms of like eras and the guys that they came up with. There are fewer players just naturally that started playing with Slasher and Attach that teamed with them multiple years ago, like, and just on that alone, like, if you think about 5 years ago, there were guys that played with Slasher was like, well, I'll definitely give a chance to Slasher even if he has like a bad game because I know what he's capable of. But there might be players now that are like 18, 19, 20 where it's like, well, I only know like this version of Slasher, and I'm going to pick this other guy that I played in challengers with or something like that. And I could see that being the case. And the chances kind of run out for a lot of CDL players, or pretty much all of them if you're not like Scump. There's really not that many unlimited opportunities around here.